Hi there. Okay, so I just want to quickly go through the UI for 3D Studio Max. We've done obviously the viewports, so you know what they are. These four windows here. So I'm going to start going along the top, which is our toolbar. I'm going to come down the right hand side, which is our command panel. Then down here to our sort of navigational panel, if you like. And then we're going to move along here, which is our timeline, animation timeline. Then up here, which is our scene graph, basically our scene list. And then we've got this this space here, which is used for tools when you, depending on what mode you're in. So if you go into poly mode, you'll get a lot of poly tools. You can use freeform mode and it'll change to all those icons, but you've got to have objects in the scene for these to appear. Okay, so I'm not going to go into massive amount of detail because it's better to use the tools and learn how to use them, and you sort of like, they ingrain into your brain much better that way. But I'm going to sort of go over them briefly, and then obviously as we go through the course we'll use them and it'll be a lot more clear. So let's start along this top here. First of all, you can pretty much customize Max however you want. So you see these little grippy handles on the edges here. You can grab those and move your panels around and park them in different places throughout Max. So you can have it down the left hand side if you want to, or you can have it along the bottom, you know, and put it in wherever you want to. And you can, I actually prefer it up there, so I'm going to leave it up there. In fact, I want it to go, see, I don't like this. So what you can do is you can grab this little one and just put it on the end like that, and it will bump it up, and you know, so it all fits along the top. If you right click on the empty space, you get a menu and you can add more elements to your toolbar. But again, it's a lot to go through, so we'll tackle some of those as we go along. But these are basically standard ones that you use. Obviously undo, redo, a lot of link tools there that allow you to link objects together in your scene. These are all your transform, so you've got move and rotate, scale along here, and these are your selection ones, these three here. So you can select by object, select by name, you can drag and select, and you can change these depending on what type of drag and select you want. If you press on the button and hold down, you get different sort of selection types. I always pretty much use the rectangular selection at the top of the selection there. If you come along here, various other things, I'm not going to cover them too much here. Like I said, these are all your snap toggles. You can snap various things, rotational snap, percentage snap. You've got a whole bunch more snaps over here. And you've got your mirror, so if you've got an object and you want to mirror it, just click on that button and it just flips it. Here you can align an object to any axis in your scene. Scene Explorer, which is pretty much the same as this down here on the left hand side. In fact, it is the same as that down the left hand side. You've got your layer. That's quite handy. That looks like that, but it's not. They're very different things, and you use your layer. We use this layer tool later on in the course. Curve editor, handy for animation. Schematic view. This is your material editor. You're going to be using this a lot going forwards, so get used to looking at that. I think there's two modes here. I often use this mode because I've been brought up by using that mode. I've always used it and I quite like the look of it, but you can use it in slate mode as well, which looks like that, and it's node based basically. Yeah, I was going to go into it then, but I'll leave it for now. And let me just change it back to the compact. There we go. These are your rendering options. We won't be using those much. I think we use them later when we render out some foliage from Max, but apart from that we don't really use these much because we're not actually doing any rendering, we're creating real-time graphics. And like I said, these are your snaps. So that's your toolbar, very quick, very basic, very standard really. A lot of these options are standard here along the top. yeah, so that's that. Down here, you've got your command panel. This is quite complex. It's not very much to look at, but there's a lot in behind here. A lot. You know, there's a lot of lot going on. So basically, top row is you know, you got these are your main tabs, and you got sub tabs of each of the main tabs. So you can see how it's buried basically. So in your main tab, this is create, and you can come down to its sub tab, to its sub layer, and you can create geometry, and you can create shapes, you can create lights, cameras, and various other things along there. And this menu here changes based on what you've got selected up there. And not only that, you know, if I select on lights, you've got different types of lights. You can standard lights, and you've got photometric lights. So it's, you know, look at all the different types of objects you can create. There's quite a lot in there, so going through all this would just take forever. So I'm going to, you know, during this course, I'm going to show you how to build objects, obviously, to a standard where you're quite competent at doing it, and then it's up to you to go and explore all these other little avenues that you can go down. So that's create, and you've got modify. So once you created an object in your scene, you can then modify it. So if I go in here and I create a box, for example, like so, expand my window, there's my box. Now if I turn that, convert to a poly, I can now modify it. So there's my create window where we created it. If I click one across, I can now got all these modification tools that I can use, which again we'll be using that a lot. And like I said before, now this has become active. This modeling panel up here has become active, so you've got all these tools that you can use on this object also, and some of them are really useful, and we use them a lot, like Swift Loop, for example. You can let's just bring on edge faces. So Swift Loop is a really useful tool. Just lets you do lots of Swift loops basically. So there we go, very quick. So that's modify. This is your hierarchy, and there's your motion. This is your animation panel. Display, so we can turn stuff on and off and do various things with the display in this panel. And this is your utilities, and we'll be coming in here from time to time also. But most of the time you'll spend a lot of time in these two, occasionally going into that, and occasionally going into these last three. But as a modeler, this is where you're going to spend a lot of your time here, the first three, I'd say, mostly. So down here, I think we've touched on this a little bit in the viewport section. So if I build my box back up again, I can show you and can demonstrate these features here. So you know, you got your zoom. So if you put that on, you can zoom in and out. Don't tend to use it that much at all. I use the wheel mostly, like I've explained before. So this is zoom all. If you've got all of your windows selected, they will all zoom together. This is focus on the selected object, and you can change that actually. So if you press and hold down, you can just focus or focus on all objects. Because I've only got one, I can demonstrate that very quickly. I think I cover this anyway, but so now it's all objects. If I click on the blue one, it's just the selected one. So if you press, select that one, it's all objects. The white box, press and hold, selected objects. There you go. So it's fairly simple. It's just really handy if you've got a massive scene and you click on an object way off into the distance, you know, and you want to zoom in on your selected objects. It's a very quick way to do it. And that applies to all windows again, same as that one. If you've got all your windows viewports, if you've got all your viewports on, that one it will do the same on all of them. Let's maximize viewport like this. That's another way of doing that. So I can demonstrate this now. If I click on that, you can see all the windows do the same thing, and the same with this. If I click on that, they'll all zoom, which is quite handy sometimes. This is your orbit around the selected object. And this works the same as the one above it, in that you can change it. So that will zoom around the center of the two objects. If I click on the blue one, that'll zoom around the selected objects. You can see that zooms out the edge there. This is pan, so it'll pan on a single plane. And this changes your field of view. Just be careful using this, because you can really screw up your viewport by doing that. And these here and this timeline here is your animation. We won't be using that very much, maybe a little bit as a demonstration. I think I'll use it later on, but primarily it's used for animation, so you probably won't be using that much if you're a modeler. You know, these are your standard windows, so I press play, it will play the timeline, but there's nothing animating. I can demonstrate it very quickly. So if I move this, I can move this object along. So if I set my auto key, it'll put a keyframe there once I move it. So if I move my timeline along to say, if I move my timeline along to 60 and then move this along, it parks a keyframe at the beginning and at the end. So when I play it, now it will just move it along. Tink. And that's the basis of that, basically. And you can set that to anything you like. If you right click on the play button, you get a configuration time configuration box, so you can set the start and end time. But like I say, we won't be doing that much, so delete the keyframes from the window. We don't want them in our scene. Up the left hand side here is your Scene Explorer window. So every time you create an object, like I've got this box, I've got this box, you can see they're highlighted. If I create a light, just make a standard Omni light like that. Put another one over there. You can see my two lights there. Let's stick a camera in there, free cam. There we go. So I've got my different objects in the scene. I can now turn them on and off based on these blue boxes down the left hand side. So if I want to just organize my list, it won't affect the scene objects, but if I want to hide all of the cameras in the list, I click the camera button and it goes. If I want to hide all the lights in my list, I click that and the lights go. Even though they're still in the scene, you just don't see them in the list, and it's quite useful. Like I said before, if you've got a big long list of objects, just to organize them like that, so you can navigate them a lot more easily. But if you want to hide them, so if I bring them back on, this little eye to the left of each object lets you turn it off and on. See, they're all disappearing. I'm just left with one light, which is that one. You can turn them all back on again, and that's really handy as well if you've got a lot of objects in your scene. So that's pretty much it. That's the UI layout, and a very quick and brief overview of what each area does. And in each lecture as we go forward, we'll learn more and more about this. So that's the basic UI covered, and I hope it makes a lot more sense to you. But as we go forward, like I say, it'll become a lot clearer. So I'll see you in the next lecture.